The King's conquest of Spain is over.
It
no
is done.
more vacation.
None.
And back to Talking Tuesday. Televisions. 10 TVs. Adam King is back. I'm back. The 4th of July is
Your
over.
request of, what was it, Dollywood?
Dollywood. And then
Did you meet Dolly Parton?
didn't see her there.
That's
got
pretty
on her,
rude.
Got on her tour bus.
You got on her tour?
Yeah.
And she wasn't there?
She wasn't there. I'm
That's
like,
a little creepy.
I guess
we're
I'll just-
being honest.
Guess I'll just hang out.
I don't think you were supposed to be there.
Oh.
That seems...
Don't ask questions.
All
We're
right.
off and running on a Talking Tuesday. And the biggest development of all of the last 2 weeks of vacation was that Birm realized, as he was filling in for you, that we used to call it Talking Tuesday. But there's a king in Talking.
Oh my goodness.
So
Talking Tuesday.
everything is coming together.
I love it. Thank you, Birm.
There might be a new graphic for that as well. And we are 2 weeks away from Big Ten Media Days.
Which
And
is the ultimate Talking Tuesday.
And did we get the guest list right or what?
It was the easiest guest list of all time.
Maybe.
You know what?
There was a little bit of doubt there with Jeremiah.
Was the last quarterback to go to Big Ten Media Day CJ?
It would be best. I think, did Justin Fields have to do a remote media day?
It feels like the one guy.
I guess it was CJ, yeah.
Yeah, the one guy you want to talk to all the time is the quarterback, and he's just Kyle hasn't been there, Will hasn't been there.
Yeah. How good would Will Howard have been at Big Ten
Big Ten
Media?
would have been great,
That would've
but
been
we
awesome.
didn't know he was the starting quarterback.
We didn't. Well, we actually don't know who Ohio State's starting
That's
quarterback is. That's another week after that,
Yeah.
July 31st. We have that
Do you
tape for the first
believe
day of
it's
camp.
closing in?
I'm so excited. Get the vacations done. 2 weeks away in Vegas. We'll get to that. We'll have questions for Sonny, for Caleb Downs, for Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Day. That's 2 weeks away.
I
Today,
do
though,
wanna
we
say-
have to follow up. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
want to give you credit because Austin texted me and he said one thing: vacation is done. I'm ready for some football, and if that isn't spot on,
I know. Once you get to July, it's like we're there.
game on.
We're there. And we started this a couple of weeks ago before the vacations,
Mhm.
before the madness. And it was questions for the coaching staff. And I locked you into the offensive side of the football. So now we've got to switch sides. We've got to go to defense. And there's really some, I think, pretty good questions for every level.
Yeah, I think you can start at the biggest scope of things, which is, one question that I very much have is this defensive line rotation. There was a big conversation last year. How much is Matt Patricia going to be involved? I would like to ask, are you letting, Larry Johnson decide which guys are out there on a given play? Or is this, I have a hard time calling it Matt Patricia's defense because I do understand that it's, very similar defense to what's been there. It's the Buckeye defense that Matt Patricia is now running.
Yeah.
But are we going to have a situation last year where, the defensive line is always a conversation, or is it simply put, hey, I want these guys out here. Let's go. Let's work together and figure that out. That's a big question for me.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating one because there may be a situation this year with Matt Patricia, and we talked to Bobby Carpenter about this last week about more multiple fronts and how you're going to deploy the linebackers. Like they all fit together because if you want to play Peyton Pierce more and have some traditional 3 linebacker looks, well, that impacts the way you're going to use guys up front. If you're trying to shift around Arvell Reese to rush the passer, well, Larry Johnson's got to be involved in that.
Yeah.
What do I need to do to mix and match edge personnel? CJ Hicks, his role in that. What is that? Like, there are a bunch of moving pieces that I think once you zoom out, it's like, well, what's the Matt Patricia influence going to look like? We don't really know because it could go like a million different directions.
I think you nailed it there. And it's kind of a question that feels like it only has one answer, but it's like it has to be, because if he's going to switch guys on, at a microscopic level, how much is he going to want CJ Hicks in the game? How much is he going to want, different guys is one thing, but when you're right, when you're switching fronts, when you're changing all of that, that is on a macroscopic level, that has to come directly from Matt Patricia to say, this is what I want in on this play.
I'm curious to see how it plays out because some of the conversation that we had last year about rotation and then the last several years about recruiting with Larry Johnson and another R word to throw in there, a retirement at some point.
Yeah.
Recruiting, rotation, retirement. It's like it all comes back to that for the Rushman. And I love
Hey, that's the
alliteration.
fourth R.
That's the fourth R.
Well done.
It felt like there was tension. I know that's, publicly Jim Knowles and Larry Johnson said, no, that's not the case. You take them at their word for that. It felt like there were times, especially during the first regular season Oregon game, that existed, that there was something that wasn't quite clicking. And I thought that, this Larry Johnson retirement issue has been just lingering out there for 4 or 5 years because at some point he's going to have to stop. You don't get to coach forever.
No. You can if you'd like. Seems like a horrible way to spend your.
It's probably not going to happen. I'd say
I recommend going to Spain.
Yeah, you can get rejuvenated.
This is the arch. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
you're nailing it.
I know. I'm just
back and fresh. That's
we're ready. We're ready. I think I thought there was a possibility that Jack, JT, Tyleik, Ty, you get to the end of the road and you win a national championship. Like the legacy is pretty much secured at this point. Larry Johnson is the most legendary defensive line coach, I'd say, in the history of college football. If you can think of someone with a better resume than him, let me know and educate me on that because I find it hard to believe. But if you look at the last 6 months and the last couple of weeks, not every recruitment has been successful, but he's winning a lot more of them. I watched him at these one-day recruiting camps. Physically looked like, he had been in the weight room too with Mickey Marai. And I think, I don't know if that's a tribute to the relationship he's built with Matt Patricia, the fact that he's got a new challenge to replace all four of those guys. And like, well, I've done enough here. I don't want to have to go through that process. But he looks like he's really embracing that opportunity. And if it is a better working relationship, and I'm not saying that it was bad or whatever, broken beyond repair with Jim Knowles because they won a national championship together.
You're tiptoeing a lot. I don't want you to fall over.
Just saying it can be, if it's better, that would be a huge deal for Ohio State. And it may be what you see that can lend itself to some of the odd fronts that have not been used very often by Larry Johnson.
I will say two things about the Larry Johnson conversation. I am a firm believer that at every level of coaching, if you have created a good example is Bill Belichick and the Patriots. If you have done everything at the best level in the world, then you get to set your own terms. If you want to coach, if Larry Johnson wants to coach for 20 more years, that's his prerogative because he's proven. I mean, Larry, at some point in the next 20 years, got to take a vacation. But that's his prerogative. He's proven that he can develop great players. And look at, you want to talk about development? Tyleik Williams was a first-round pick. That's a huge. Jack and JT, we really started to see there at the end what he could be. I think, and I don't know this is just a thought, if I'm Ryan Day and I'm looking at all this turnover on the defensive line and all those questions, the last thing that I want? A new coach in that room.
Yeah.
So I say, please, please, please do not leave. At least these guys. You can craft these guys. I feel like a role for Larry becomes more integral now because last year you knew the four guys. If they're healthy, it's Jack, JT, Ty, and Tyleik. That's the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
This year, they're going to have to lean on Larry to say, who's the guy we put in now? Who is? And I think it's probably a really good sign that he's still here because that tells me that he and Matt Patricia get along really well because you don't want to go through a whole new system change when you've coached for that long and coached for that many coaches. So I do think there are questions about how it all looks, how it plays out, but that's not just with Larry Johnson. That's with the whole defense. There's a reason that Matt Guerreri and Tim Walton got a promotion. They are an integral part of this defense, of the play calling, of they've all got their little titles that they get.
They were in the discussion to actually just be the co-defensive coordinators. Yeah.
And so I would just love to see from a high up look, if you could just give me 5 minutes to watch how they make a decision on a given play in a scrimmage, I would love it. It would just be, is it just coming from Matt Patricia's mind and they have the meetings on Tuesday and then on Saturday it's, here you go, boss?
Yeah.
I'd be very interested to see that. No, that's my biggest question.
It's a great question. I think the point you made about Tyleik Williams is really, really valid, worth keeping in mind because we've spent also the last 6 months saying, well, does Ohio State, should they have been more involved in the transfer portal? Should they have taken any warm body to help at defensive tackle? And they did not. They did not see an upgrade. And that means that you have not only faith that Jason Moore could take a next step, that Tywan Malone could take a next step, that Will Smith Jr. could take a next step, or Jarquez Carter might be able to play as a true freshman. We'll see. But it's also that, well, look what Larry Johnson got out of Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton and Devon Hamilton before that. Like he's had a lot of success with some defensive tackles when you look at the group and it's like, I don't know if that's as good. His reputation has always been for the edges and Bosa and Chase Young and Jack and JT, but he's done a really good job with those guys at the defensive tackle spot and three techniques, and he's going to have to this year. And he also picked all those guys that are in the room right now and did not select anybody to come in from outside. So when you're talking about the rotation, it also fits in hand with the depth and then the development of what that's going to look like up front. The other stuff that we're talking about, how the pieces fit together in the secondary for McBury and Tim Walton, how James Laurinaitis is going to use the linebackers to steal some of the questions that you might have there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's nothing that's more pressing than the defensive line. That's going to determine everything.
100%. And I think it's funny. So often that is the conversation is, well, when is the next Chase Young? We had Chase Young. We had the Bosa brothers. You know who I think of? It always comes to my mind when I think of Larry Johnson is someone like Tommy Togiai. You're getting ready for a national championship game and everybody's looking at videos. Where's Tommy Togiai? That's because he took these guys that were great players, but he made them integral pieces to a championship run that season. I mean, Togiai played phenomenal in that Sugar Bowl. And so when you look at that, I think that is going to be more of what we see this year is guys that by the end of the season, you know their name is Buckeye fans, but you're going to hear Chris Fowler saying in the Rose Bowl, this guy has really developed this year. Or, just
we have to go back to the Rose Bowl.
It's going to be the Rose Bowl. It's always the Rose Bowl. And somehow, I was thinking I've got all these, I'm starting to collect notebooks from the Cotton Bowl. So I need another one for those. I'm running out of pages on those. So I just think that is going to be, it's not going to be Chase Young this year. It's not going to be even Jack or JT. It's going to be a collective unit of really good guys that now gives Larry the opportunity to develop them into a great defensive line.
Yeah.
Next question.
Is it still defensive line?
It is not. It's linebacker.
Okay.
I have decided that I could not coach in modern college football. I'm going to hang up that.
In the past, you were there.
I was there, but
Ryan,
too far. I apologize. It's not for me.
Okay.
Because I love to just put the best players out there and just let them play 100 snaps.
Okay.
You can't do that.
That would be bad.
That's not great in a 16-game season. They say that's really not
1,600 snaps, Arbel Reese. That's what you're going to have to play.
Well,
Sorry.
so that was
for Coach King.
That's for Coach. That's right. Every snap. Get out there. Go again. Get in the ice bath after. I don't know. I say that like you could do that when there was 12 games. It was still not worth it.
Still a lot.
But what is the conversation like for James Laurinaitis? And I understand that Peyton Pierce is great, and I understand that there are a lot of great linebackers in that room.
Yeah.
But when you have Arbel Reese and Sonny Styles, two guys that have clearly shown themselves to be, it's a weird word, dudes. They're dudes. Like, I
like to call them aliens.
Exactly. It's a good way to put it. What is the conversation like of, I just want to keep them on the field.
Yes.
But I know that I have to let these guys rest because they can't play every snap. And how do you balance that on a day-to-day basis, knowing that you have to have a number 3 and a number 4 that are good enough to be number 1s, but maybe you don't want to put in the game because you want your bet, like against Texas. Don't you want those two out there on every single snap?
Yeah. I think, look, that becomes the question of the balancing act. Does Ohio State approach Texas like it is a college football playoff game where you're going to empty the chamber knowing that the next 2 weeks and then an off week after that you can play Peyton Pierce and Garrett Stover and Riley Pettijohn or whoever you want.
Who are very good linebackers.
They're all going to be very good. And I think the answer is, you're going to play those guys and you're going to push them further probably in week 1 than you would in other years. That's the way that I'm looking at it, knowing what's on the other side. But I think it's a fair question. Like, once you get into the Big Ten rigors and week after week after week, and you have like tough nose games back to back on the road, Wisconsin and Illinois, what's the number of snaps that you want to play those guys there? And how much further along is Peyton Pierce and ready to push that and expand the rotation and equipped to handle those same rigors? Like, we've talked about him a lot, Peyton Pierce, as that third linebacker, and how highly Matt Patricia thinks of him, James Laurinaitis, how highly a bunch of coaches around the country who are trying to tamper with him in the offseason, how highly they think of Peyton Pierce. So we know that exists. Garrett Stover got a dude of the week honor not too long ago. He missed a part of spring camp that, he really wanted to say that he was in that conversation as well. So
Riley Pettijohn is a future dominant linebacker.
Yeah, TJ Alford, same thing. So, I am really impressed with the way that James Laurinaitis has turned this around, because it was, you think back a couple years ago, and not just like, with all due respect to the, Tough Borland did a great job. Pete Warner did a really good job. But once you got beyond that, it was like, for what? Nothing.
Well,
like, what's here? Nothing.
I think Tough Borland is an interesting example. And if you're watching Tough, I don't mean any disrespect. You're an amazing leader. You're a great linebacker. But I don't know that Tough Borland as your chief linebacker in the national title game can happen at Ohio State. And so,
and it's not like that. They're not worried about that anymore.
No, and they flipped it to the point where, you've got two guys that you.
Somebody thought that could be like a Cody Simon situation a year ago. I don't know. I heard it.
I
heard it in the streets.
That doesn't sound right. Cody, I've always believed in you. I've been a big believer. I don't know who would have said that. Well, I mean, look at the idea that you've got a former safety playing linebacker at Ohio State. I like that build. And I would also, it's a second question for Laurinaitis, maybe looking down the line a little more.
Who are you going to steal from the secondary?
Yes, exactly. Well, does it change what you like in a linebacker? Because so often in our minds, we think of a linebacker as like, the biggest guy on the field, scary. But you look at Cody, he was lean. He was quick. Sonny's lean. Arvell kind of has that look to him of...
He's probably 8 feet tall.
Yeah, that's exactly. But does it make you want to bring in a more versatile linebacker, somebody that can play in the secondary to go hand in hand with some of these receivers versus just the guys that look like you when you were playing, James?
I mean, and if I'm not mistaken, Garrett Stover was playing a lot at safety in high school before, with the knowledge that he was going to be a linebacker at the next level. We heard Jim Knowles talk about that a year ago, about letting Sonny get that experience and see the defense from a different level before moving closer to the box. I'm not saying that's going to become the blueprint. You don't treat a college team,
No, you can't do that.
Like it's a high school. We're going to use that development year.
We're going to waste your freshman year. Yeah. You play secondary.
That was sort of an isolated case.
Yeah.
With Sonny arriving before, his body was really filling out to the level that it is now. And by the way, for as much as we talk about Arvell, like Sonny is coming into his own.
Oh, I mean,
as also a dude of the week, also like gonna get the block O.
Yeah.
I think that's the third area at the linebacker that you look like. So how has Sonny become this more well-rounded leader? What does that mean? How much is that Cody Simon influence? Maybe it's none. Maybe it's just being around his family and the way that they operate. I don't know, but like for as much as we talk about Caleb Downs, Sonny Styles is really, and even Arvell Reese, like Sonny Styles is the guy that puts everything together in my mind for James Laurinaitis. And how many different ways can you use him? Because we've already seen that 4 or 5 different ways during his Ohio State career. And there's still another level I think that they're trying to tap into with him.
All right, I got another question from Matt Patricia.
Okay.
He's had a spring under his belt.
Okay.
He's getting ready for fall camp. I'm going to remove the defensive line because I think we can all agree there's the most questions there. But what is his biggest question mark from the linebackers and secondary? What's the one thing that he circles and says, ooh, I need to come up with an answer there, or I need to see it from this group? I think that would be really interesting because they do feel so sound almost. It feels like we know the depth chart.
Are you hoping that he would say nickel, or do you think he would say nickel? Is that why you bring it up?
I think he would probably mention it. He's not shy about stuff like that.
I think he'll answer it.
Yeah, I think he would, but I'm very curious to see his thoughts. I don't necessarily know what this defense is going to look like. I guess is kind of, it sounds like a crazy thing to say, but I don't know what Matt Patricia, how different this is all going to be. The spring was very vanilla. It's
very much so.
Yeah. And so is that what's keeping him up? It's like, okay, well, I want to change this a little bit, or is it the nickel? Is how much of the Matt Patricia impact are we going to see on this defense? Or is he showing up and saying, all right, guys, you've got a great linebacker core, got 2 guys that can fill in as ones. The secondary is the greatest secondary in college football. Mm-hmm. Defensive line, Larry, you're figuring that out. And he's just drawing up plays. Like, I know that's not what's happening, but what is...
Yeah, I think that's why coming out of spring, it was still... If you had told me in March that by mid-April, we were going to see like 50-50 snap breakdown for Jermaine Matthews at corner and in the nickel.
Yeah.
I've been like, I don't know why you would do that.
Exactly.
Now, he's got the skill set to do it. He's got the desire to do it. And Ohio State needed to figure out what it wants to do at that position, because I think what you're talking about and what we're speculating with Matt Patricia, it's like, I think he could go week to week like an NFL-style game plan.
Yes.
Changing things around, deploying. If he wants to play traditional and heavy 3 linebacker sets against Wisconsin and Illinois, they can do that. No problem.
Yeah. Texas?
offhand, yeah, maybe Texas is going to do that. I don't really know what their personnel looks like. They're trying to replace all those wide receivers as well.
No, they're dominant. They're solid. That's
they're the greatest team in college football. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
They don't have to replace anybody.
No,
my mistake.
Ohio State replaced everybody. Texas loaded.
But you can do that too, and maybe that becomes the way that the nickel is deployed differently. You need more cover. Maybe you're going to use Jermaine Matthews for that. You need someone to come stick there. I think Jermaine can stop the run too, but maybe that lends itself to Bryce West or Lorenzo Styles. I don't know. I think we're going to find all that out from week to week, and it may circle back to what you're talking about with rotation, both on the defensive line and at linebacker, where like you may be Peyton Pierce or CJ Hicks, and 1 week you play 40 snaps, and the next week you play a completely
10.
Different opponent. You
Yeah.
play 5,
Yeah.
10. I think that's a world where Ohio State could be living in with Matt Patricia, and that would be an adjustment to watch. But everything that we always hear about Matt Patricia, whether that's Bobby talking about his experience with him or Belichick defenses, it's that you can't be married to one system. And what has Matt Patricia talked about with the Bible? There's a million different defenses inside of it, and you want to pick the best one to go against that opponent. Mm-hmm. And he's not limited by a 53-man roster. You go through the course of the year. We've heard Ryan Day talk about, there's no waivers and get hurt. You're going to deal with some of the stuff. Ohio State has 30 different defenders who can play at a championship level and who all bring a little bit something different to the table. And Matt Patricia, I think, will use all of that.
Mm-hmm. This is not a question. This is a statement, and I'll say it again until I'm proven wrong. And I really don't think I will be. I think that Matt Patricia, he might not have been the number one name when this all started, but it was an absolutely fantastic hire.
Yeah.
I just think the more that you start looking at the tree and how it all shapes out and what Patricia wanted and what Ohio State needed, I just feel like it's almost an excitement to watch the defense was very exciting last year because they were very good.
Yeah.
But you weren't watching the defense to see, what are they going to do on this play?
Right.
I feel like that's going to be so fun this year for fans, for us to watch and say, oh, did you see what they did on that play? Oh, what you're talking about. Oh my gosh, they've completely switched defenses for this.
Yeah.
I just think he's such a smart football mind. And there are a lot of Lions fans out there that aren't happy and say, he's an idiot, he's the worst, he ruined our team. He's not the head coach, okay? He's the defensive coordinator, and he's proven he might be okay at that. There might be a couple rings that he has that proves that he's
distinctly possible that he's overqualified to be the defensive
Ohio State defensive. Exactly. I was actually watching yesterday the behind the scenes of the Malcolm Butler play.
Oh.
And when you hear Matt Patricia talk about it, it's like he's just so smart and analytical and everything. And I think that's what you need. Especially, I think that's why you see guys like CJ Hicks take to him and this whole defense really like him because they understand, one, he's proven at the next level.
Yep.
And two, he seems like the kind of guy that can give you the why and is not afraid to give you the why and explain to you, this is what you need to do here. And then, come back and say, this is what you could do better. But he talked about how Teddy Bruschi, I think I mentioned this, where Teddy Bruschi wants to do it, then find out what he did wrong.
Yep.
And that helped Matt Patricia learn a lot. I feel like that's incredibly valuable at a college level. Let Sonny Styles go out there and do his thing. Let CJ Hicks, let Arvell Reese, let Kenyatta Jackson do their thing, and then take them back and say, here's where you can improve.
So you got back from vacation, then just immediately started grinding the tape.
That's what I do. I am obsessed with football. I didn't stop reading about football on vacation. I was supposed to.
Well, did you do anything fun in Spain?
I did a million things fun.
What was the best part?
Went on a boat in Mallorca, Spain. That was pretty cool.
Ooh.
We went around all the different coasts. It was a lot of traveling, not a lot of vacationing. I did not lay down and enjoy the sun very much. We were going.
You look tan?
That's because it's 100,000 degrees in Spain. It's also 100,000 degrees here. It was great. We got off the plane and I'm like, oh, nice.
Yeah.
The exact same place, but it was a lot.
Exact same, yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of history the same.
Feels like the Spanish coast out there.
Yeah, it does. That's what it looks like out there. Same thing.
It's next to the river.
Stayed in a villa that was built before America existed.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean,
really puts America's birthday into different contexts.
Well, yeah. I mean, I thought, boy, I guess my apartment in Powell is not as old as this place is,
Sure isn't.
No.
Well, we're glad you're back.
I'm glad to be back. And I want you to know, while I was on vacation, I did read the comments while I was on the plane. Did I not text you?
Yeah, you did.
There was one person, and I'm not going to name names, but he said, Adam talk less, Austin talk more.
What?
That's what he said. There were a lot of good comments. It was a 20-1.
That's the ratio. First pro Austin comment of all time.
I don't like the pro Austin comments. All right. Yeah.
Thanks, Dad. And thanks to you all for watching us on 10 TV Plus, 97.1 The Fan, YouTube. Also, if you just want the audio only, which I don't know why you would, because Adam King is right here for you to look at.
I'm very sweaty.
You can get that on every audio platform that exists for podcasts. This is The Beat. It's been a Talking Tuesday.
I love it.
So excited to have that. We got one more, and then we'll be in Las Vegas for Big Ten Media Days. He'll be there. I'll be there. Birm will be there. And we hope you join in and watch when we talk about the Buckeyes there, because guess what? The season is getting closer. For Adam King, I'm Austin Ward. We'll talk to you later.